So we're moving on now to the visionary part of the morning. That's not to say everything hasn't been fabulous in its visionary state all morning, but this is really where we're trying to kind of imagine the present state of things, lobbing the ball and trying to imagine that is the future state. That is where we're headed. I'm going to be super stubborn about that and ultimately flexible about how we get there. But that does require leaders, founders, everyone in this room to constantly be thinking about the here and now and that future state and working your way through it so that you are future-proofing your teams, your company, you yourself as a leader, and having a real stubbornness about that, but a flexibility about how you get there and all of that. And so we're going to be discussing next up with this panel the practical use of AI in companies, generative AI, building and deploying AI, and regulation of AI. So a lot on big data, big tech to come. We have 2 poll questions, so if you'd like to head to the event app for a moment as we get set up. The first question that you're going to find there is, would you use generative AI like ChatGPT in your business? And the simple question there results in a yes or no. And we have a second question for you on the app. What area do you believe is most likely to be affected by AI in the future? And you've got 5 options there. You've got legal services, pharma and life sciences, sales and marketing, transport and logistics, HR and recruitment. We'll keep that poll open for the duration of this session, but do get in there. We're really interested to see where that lands out at the end, and hopefully it might even provoke a little bit of debate and discussion at the end of this panel, which is called Future Focus, What Next for Technology. It's going to be chaired by Oisín, who you met earlier, and Oisín Tobin is the partner and head of technology sector for Mason Hayes & Curran. We've got Brian McElligott, partner technology team, Mason Hayes & Curran. We've got Sohini D, founder and CEO of Empeal. We've Graham Baitson, head of customer, Dimply, and we've got Garret Molloy, SVP of Global Channels Corporate Banking in Citi. Please give them a warm round of applause. Oisín, over to you.
Sure, thanks, Anya. All right, morning everyone. Hope everyone's enjoyed the morning so far. I'm double jobbing, as you can see. I decided to give myself the job I really wanted to do, which was to interrogate all these guys about what the hell is happening with AI. So, it's very hard in the market to avoid talk about AI at the moment, and you see a big spectrum of views, and one that you sometimes see from some thought leaders in the space is AI is coming to take over the world. We're all going to be enslaved by AI, etc., etc., etc. Now, every time I hear this narrative, I look at my robot Hoover as it bangs itself repetitively into the wall, and I sort of relax a bit. I'm like, I don't think the Matrix is going to happen anytime soon. That said, over the last year, when you look at how much the technology has evolved, it almost feels like in a year we've had, at least perception-wise, a decade in advancement here, particularly around some of the new generative AIs like OpenGPT, which we'll come to in a moment, or ChatGPT. So what we want to do is get some of the best thought leaders in town around, not around a table, I guess, all in a line, sort of like we're doing a perp walk, to answer some kind of pressing questions in terms of where is the technology now and how do you use it in your business in a practical sense. So I want to kind of kick off by asking you guys about the practical uses of AI and how do you actually deploy it? How do you take it from the headline into concrete, banal business reality? So Sohini, I want to start with you. I know Empeal, your company, is using AI to effectively lead to better healthcare outcomes and try and keep people out of hospital. So can you explain a bit about your technology, your company, and what you guys are doing and how AI is helping that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. Thanks, MHC, for the invite, and thanks, Oisín. So Empeal provides a multi-sided digital health platform which is AI-driven. And we work on prevention and management of chronic conditions, and our main customers are health services and insurance. Now, the way we're doing it is lifestyle behavior management and adherence to care plan is very important for chronic disease management. So for our clients, we provide the multi-sided technology. One side you have the patients of the clients, and the other side you have the healthcare team. And we gather a lot of data from the patients on lifestyle behavior and adherence and put it through our AI engine. which is preloaded with care plans from the healthcare team, and it automatically goes out to the patients, like recommendations, patient education, reminders, etc. So what we are doing, first step, is we are taking away the repetitive work of the healthcare professionals, so freeing up their time. Secondly, what we are doing is gathering those data and of adherence and reporting it back to the healthcare professionals. At the moment, either they don't have it or they're calling up each and every patient to find out, right? So what we're doing is we're becoming an intelligent assistant with the structured data to the healthcare professionals. And that basically helps them to provide timely interventions to the people who actually need it. So that second thing is then with the intelligent assistance, you are providing people with the service they need to keep them out of acute care or hospitals. So that's how we are using AI in 2 steps.
Got it. So it's not that AI is replacing doctors or healthcare providers, more that it's helping them do their jobs better and taking some of the, I don't want to say menial, but more routine aspects of the work out of their day-to-day job.
Yes, the menial aspects out and then becoming an intelligent assistant to them to do their job better.
Brilliant. And Garret, kind of jumping sectors a bit. Now in Citi, you guys are doing some very interesting stuff around AI. You have your big innovation lab in Dublin. Could you give a sense for the audience in terms of what you guys are doing and how you see AI disrupting the financial services space?
Sure. Thanks, Oisín. Citi has an innovation lab which was set up about a decade ago, and its focus was on emerging technologies and to see how we could create innovative solutions for our clients. It's been a success, and we've built out a network now globally. In terms of AI, we've looked at 3 different areas for AI. There's client engagement, where we look to use AI to identify personalized products and services for our clients, and also we can monitor real time their financial position, exposure, balance credits, etc., and act upon that proactively. We also look at it in operations enablement, we call it, where you're looking for efficiencies in the operations space. There's a lot of manual processes, and anywhere we can get automation there for cost savings is very important. And third area is risk and controls, where we're looking at fraud and cyber. And one of the first programs in Citi was a fraud detection tool, where we're using AI to identify client payment patterns, and then AI would flag outliers, payment outliers, and be able to follow those up proactively as well. In Citi, we're looking to use AI cautiously. We're in a highly regulated environment, and we're conscious that there may be false negatives or positives in the system. So we use it as an assistive technology, so where it's supporting existing processes, and we don't use it as a fully automated or autopilot process in that case. And also because the regulation isn't set yet, so we're not sure where that will go and how the market will perceive our uses of AI. So in general, we're cautious on that. But we are heavy users of AI. We've set up a centre of excellence for AI to give us the policies and guidelines, and to keep track of all the AI implementations we have in Citi.
Great. So it's there's echoes here of what Sohini was saying, where you guys are using it to facilitate existing processes and develop them, and more for pattern recognition, as opposed to handing your business over to the robots, as it were.
Certainly, yeah.
Definitely. Sounds good. And Graham, could you explain in terms of what you guys are doing in Dimply and sort of how you've been deploying AI in the business?
Yeah, sure. So Dimply's aim is to help people think and feel better about money. So we've built an engaging platform that allows financial enterprises like a bank or a pension provider create highly customized and personalized experiences for the customers. So where AI comes into that is kind of like 3 main areas. The first is understanding where a person is along their financial life. So that's looking at transaction history, spending habits, their savings, their budgeting, and then positioning them along a scale of financial maturity. The second part is around personalization. So people react to content in different ways. Some people like text versus images versus video. So if you know where a person is positioned, what type of content they react better with, you can completely customize. So people can be using the same app but have a completely different experience. And then the third area is around, and probably most important for us, is understanding the next best financial step for the right person at the right time. So all of this comes together to bring people along financial journeys of education, of forming good behaviours to kind of become better financially aware and better financially secure.
Got it. Again, it's all about empowering the individual fundamentally, using the technology to that end.
Exactly.
Perfect. And Brian, you're our head of AI in Mason Hayes. Could you give a sense in terms of how you think law firms and also indeed private practices, or businesses that have legal needs can kind of deploy AI to simplify some of their legal tasks?
Yeah, and I think it's already happening, and in a sense, I think us in private practice are lagging our colleagues on the in-house side, and I think there's genuine reasons for that. In an in-house role, particularly, let's say, in a technology sector, there is an inbuilt culture of, if there is a process we can replace with a piece of technology, why aren't we doing it? It's not let's do it, it's like, why aren't we doing it? Yeah. Whereas in, the private practice, it's not necessarily our culture, and I think that's something that will have to change. There's also the driving factor in an in-house role where you are considered a cost center, and therefore you need to drive efficiencies through your business. So if it's the case that you are primarily engaged in contracts and a certain amount of employment work, it makes sense to buy tech to do a lot of to automate. To talk about these things, the common theme here is automation. Taking workflows, mapping them, and trying to trim down the element of human input to anything other than oversight. And I think that's something that we need in private practice to adopt. It's not as easy on our side of the fence because we offer a large range of services, so we don't fit into that bucket of, let's say, a company, and I'm overgeneralizing, but we don't fit into the bucket of a company that provides a service and then there's a certain amount of workflow from legals flowing off that. We're providing a range of services, and it's not as easy to find solutions that fit these. So you've got to have a very much a piecemeal approach to automating systems in private practice. I think we'll have to go that way anyway, and there may be overall structures in time that maybe grow to link up these technologies, but that's where we are at the moment.
Okay. So, as I mentioned at the start, the really big exciting thing around AI at the moment is generative AI. It seems to be scaring a lot of people, or it seems to be really, really cool. Graham, question to you, is generative AI like ChatGPT as good as it seems?
Well, it's quite impressive. So the last time I kind of seen excitement like this was when Boston Dynamics came out with the robot dancing, the dirty dancing. But this time is slightly different because the technology community is slightly concerned, and the reason is because the output of this seems very creative. So people are asking it to write code and in a specific language, and it's pumping out code, but a few minor changes can actually create websites or web apps. People are using it to write songs like in alignment with a favorite artist, or people are using it to ask it to write essays on a specific topic, and so good that it actually passes plagiarism. So some universities across the US and Europe have started to ban this. In terms of how good it actually is, Jordan Peterson, who is like a psychologist and an author of the 12 Rules of Life, asked it to write the 13th rule, and he said that he couldn't distinguish that he hadn't written it. So it was so good at picking up the context and exactly. And then from a business point of view, people are starting to use it to do market analysis, to do competitor analysis, to look at products in a new industry that they probably hadn't looked at, to do content creation, got to do with their marketing, their social media, all the way to doing documentation like, NDAs, contracts, resumes, cover letters. So, it's really, really impressive.
Okay. And what are the downsides to it? I'm a skeptical lawyer. I think in terms of risk as well as opportunities. So it seems like there have to be problems with something like this.
Yeah, there is limitations. So one is it's biased. So it's trained on a large data set, a subset of all data. So inherently it's biased. So it does give outputs that are in some way biased. Sometimes it gives inaccurate information. So it's trained on data from 2021 and it's not connected to the internet. So you can't validate the responses. It lacks, in some sense, a bit of common sense. The larger text it pumps out sometimes is a little bit gibberish. Doesn't have emotional intelligence, so sometimes it can say stuff that a human probably wouldn't say. And also, it's not yet able to handle video or imagery. So I think the output is only as good as the input. So there's a lot of time that needs to be spent on actually prompting it and asking it the right questions and giving it as much information as you need in order to get the right response.
Understood.
So there is limitations, but it's a great starting point.
Cool. And taking those limitations as a baseline, Garret, can something like obviously something like this is great if you're a student who's trying to cheat on their essays. But if you're like a very reputable, large, heavily regulated entity like Citi, like can you use a technology like this, or is it really just a plaything for now?
Yeah, certainly. I discussed this with our Centre of Excellence, and I was surprised at the energy they're putting into generative AI. I mean, existing solutions would be translation capabilities as generative AI, and also coding, like the likes of Copilot, where you can, kickstart your coding and have all the code 90% built, including all the necessary test cases. So that's a huge savings in terms of development. In terms of the likes of ChatGPT and these generative AIs, we are looking at different areas such as summarization. Again, we get a lot of documentation in the operations process, and if you had a tool that can summarize that. We're also looking at Q&A, so where you're doing responses to client engagements, whether it's answering emails, and also maybe some of the creative ones like Graham mentioned, and where you might say, give us a marketing campaign for a specific client. And then with the caveats that you need a human in the loop for these things, given the potential for, we call it hallucinations, that it can say something quite confidently that's completely inaccurate. So you do need to curate any of the content that you're looking at. So that would be our approach. Yeah.
So we sort of come back again to the theme that we seem to be hitting on quite a bit here, which is, yeah, it helps as a tool, but it's not a replacement for a human, effectively.
You wouldn't want to give it full control to answer emails, no.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know, it could be fun. Try it for a day. Brian, I want to jump back to you. So, like, I've seen media releases, like some law firms have already started looking, particularly in London, are looking at using ChatGPT, and I've already had some associates asking me, is this going to basically replace the work of junior lawyers? Like, what do you see, what do you see as the future for the legal profession in light of these technologies?
I think it's incredibly powerful. That's the kind of the language I would use about it. And it has the capacity to do tasks that some people do at the moment, but to the point and the theme that we've got here, it will not replace people because it will require people to manage it, no matter how good it gets. And you referenced there, the London law firms. It was Allen and Overy have taken a business license of ChatGPT, and they're being very, very coy about what they're going to do with it. And they have said that they expect it not to generate any revenue for them for the next couple of years. So that's very kind of up in the air at the moment. I mean, if you take it to an example, I could see, let's say, ChatGPT does a license with all of the publishers who do anything with Irish law, PLC, Bloomsbury, all of them. Takes in all of the known knowledge that's written down about Irish law, and then creates a knowledge base. So you just ask ChatGPT for your question, and you get your answer. So you can see that at a particular level in a firm, you could speed up processes, and you could get very neat answers coming back. I mean, I'm going on a call this evening with a client who is doing something similar in the business space, and there's one really cool use they have for it, which is if a chat message on the internet is using ChatGPT, it has the ability for when let's say the messenger or the business person on the other side is typing the answer, they'll auto-prompt the answer for them. And not only that, but you can do a click down to see, should it be more friendly answer, more formal answer, and it'll auto-correct the text. So it's back to the common theme. It is incredibly powerful. It is already in use. People are buying business licenses for it. But I don't see it replacing anyone anytime soon. I think job roles may change slightly, but I don't see it being a massive replacement just yet.
Okay, again, same theme. It helps people, it's a tool, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
Cool. And Sohini, I want to go back to you because obviously we've spoken a bit about the errors that can arise with generative AI, and if you're a student and you're, as I say, cheating on your essay and you get a B as opposed to an A, it's not the end of the world. But you're in the healthcare space. Are these technologies that are, we know have errors, we know hallucinate, we know will say things confidently even when they're wrong. Like, can a technology like that actually be used in healthcare, or is it just completely off the table?
I'll give my answers from a business perspective because I'm not a technical person. I think some of my technical team, very intelligent technical team, are here. What I would say is it's really, from our perspective, we are building the AI, keeping human in the loop at the design stage. There are a few aspects. One is access to health data is a big issue, particularly in EU. So you don't have enough data to build the generative AI. One of the mitigating factors we're doing is because our customers are either health services or your insurance who already has a lot of, they call it data sets, whereas I would call individuals. So you generate a lot of data from there. Second thing is we are a little bit different in terms of currently there are solutions which are either product-based or disease-based, right? So you're keeping the, say, diabetes at the center and then creating the solution. Where we are doing is we are keeping the patient at the center. So the patient might have diabetes, high blood pressure, and a completely different health goal of reducing stress. So for that, the individual data sets are still available. So say diabetes data set is available or reducing stress is available. But when you're combining them, it's that common area of the Venn diagram becomes very complicated to use a generative AI.
Okay.
So we have to build it. The last one is we are in multi-geography. With health, as you can imagine, demographics is very, very important. So I can train my model in India, and without a human in the loop, just bringing it into Ireland, UK, or Europe, it's going to be very, very risky. Okay. So we have to keep a human in the loop as per design. So it's not going away very soon.
Super interesting. And you hit on another really interesting theme there that I want to kind of move on to, which is the whole issue of like, how do you actually build and deploy an AI? And, you know, sort of from what I've seen in kind of practice and talk to clients is that, you know, developing one of these, you know, modern machine learning based models fundamentally requires that you have an awful lot of data and you have an awful lot of computing power, and you throw them together in ways that are well above my pay grade, and then you ultimately get an AI out of that. That's the Noddy's guide. Obviously, that kind of gives rise to some really interesting competition angles, because there's sort of a question as to whether you can, like, if you're a startup, how do you actually compete in that space? How do you get this technology? So I guess my question to you is, like, do you buy in an AI solution, or do you build it yourself, or some hybrid of the two? Like, how do you actually approach that? How do you approach that issue?
So I would say to start, the blanket answer is it's a hybrid.
Okay.
There's a lot of things you need to look at, but when we were building as business opportunity, what we saw, our USP is that AI core that we have built, right? So the data comes into the AI core, which is preloaded with the care plan. So that operation, we built it in-house completely. There's an IP issue, there's intellectual property issue and all that. So we built that in-house completely. However, there are a lot of bolt-on AI solutions that you can buy in. So what we did was, while gathering data, you can add, like, just to give you an example, document AI, document reading AI is very common off the shelf that's available. No need to go and reinvent the wheel. Go and buy it off the shelf and stick it in. So that's a combination of the two.
Got it. So it's a case of kind of building your own kind of core IP with the AI, so your business, which I guess in part drives the value of the business, is your moat. Yeah. And then outsource that which ought to be outsourced. I mean, in the same way that, you know, each business does not build their own word processor, they use Microsoft or Google for that, but they might have their own in-house kind of code that is the essence of the business.
Absolutely.
Good. Garret, how are you thinking about this on the, I guess, in the fintech side?
In terms of build or buy, I think, well, AI is a revolutionary new technology that's here to stay, and we're only beginning to sort of mine the opportunities that are there in fintech and in other sectors. I think the most important thing is initially the team. Before you can decide to build or buy, it's a very niche technology. You're going to need your knowledgeable technologists in AI who can explain the capabilities, and they need to be married to the business team in terms of what's the benefit for the organization, what are the use cases we can target to save costs or generate revenue. So I think that's the first thing. And then once you have the team together, then you can analyze the approach of a build versus a buy, and it depends then on the likes of it's your own personal data, and therefore you're looking more to build, though you might use existing models like AutoML, or you might host it on clouds. And in terms of where you're using public trained models, you'd be using perhaps sort of a mobile buy model. I think the recommendation we would have is that you focus on an initial use case and you don't try and do several at once. They're all bound to fail. So you look at a single use case and you focus on that, and the important thing is to get it to the completion. And that way your staff and your organization will learn what it takes to deliver an AI program in your unique organization. What are the technical, the legal, the ethical challenges that you may have to overcome to be able to deploy AI. And then from that, hopefully, you'll grow your AI portfolio.
Got it. So pick a solvable problem and solve it, as opposed to trying to completely reinvent your business, which is inevitably going to fail.
Exactly, yeah, and focus.
So we've talked a bit about like the business side of this. How do you even approach deploying an AI? This is obviously we're a law firm, so I'm going to talk a bit about the regulation of AI, and I did threaten everyone with some legal learning at the start, so I have to deliver on my threat or promise. So Brian, I want to kind of jump back to you. I know like there is a lot of talk in Europe at the moment about the new proposed AI Act and the regulation of this technology, and there's sort of a bit of regulatory fear around it. Could you just give the audience sort of an overview as to what's actually in the pipeline here?
Sure, yeah. So it's called the EU AI Act, and all going to plan is going to be signed roughly, I'd say, autumn this year, maybe pushed out a little bit. And there does seem to be quite an impetus behind that to get it done, although there's an element of things stalling at the moment. It's difficult to summarize it in one go, but I guess if I was to kind of go to the heart of the legislation, what it is trying to regulate is something that's called high-risk AI. There are other sectors of AI also that are in the headlights, but really the core of this legislation is about high-risk AI. And high-risk AI is defined by reference to two sets or two lists of types of AI. One you could broadly categorize as products, and you put in toys, machinery, and medical devices in that one. And the other one you'd put in more software applications in education and fintech and things like that. Start with let's say the medical device example, because it's easier to understand. If you are in that space, you are already, let's say, a highly regulated entity. And before you put a product on the market, you have a defined process internally where you need to ensure that you're meeting certain markers, and then you go to a conformity assessment agency or like a notified body, and you seek approval or a stamp of approval to get your product onto the market, and you cannot put your product on the market before then. Those guys, under this act, are going to have an additional layer of regulation solely related to AI, and there's 7 requirements that they're going to have to hit. But if you like, they will go along a well-trod process with more added in, so it's a headache for them. But now if you take that model and you put it into the tech industry, this is where it gets interesting and quite difficult for the tech industry. They're not used to that type of a model, like a product conformity assessment model. Now, these guys will self-assess. They won't go to a conformity assessment body, but they will have to go through the exact same checks and balances and record all of their, let's say, technical documentation on that journey before they can launch their product and be able to certify that the product can be launched. So it really is, it's a massive step change in the tech industry, and something equivalent to the bump that they got when GDPR came in. And it's really, really challenging at the end of the day, I think.
Cool. So getting slightly controversial for a moment, Gareth, question to you. Is this additional regulation a good thing or not? I mean, one concern I have is that Europe is going a direction where it's going to very heavily regulate AI. The US is not following us in that approach so far, at least, though they may change. Like, is additional regulation here good, or is it potentially going to kind of quash or crush, development of this technology in the EU?
I think ultimately it's good. As I mentioned at the start, a part of our cautious approach is because the regulations aren't set. So it would be good to have clarity around those regulations, and we can understand the boundaries that we can operate in. So that's only to help us, move forward with AI implementation. Concerns we'd have on the Act then would be, that the definition of AI, I suppose, isn't too generic and encompasses too many other types of technologies that are not really AI, as we're talking about today. And also, we're a very heavily regulated industry in the financial services, and how those regulations, as Brian mentioned, then interact with those financial ones that exist already. So our risk appetite may be higher because we have existing processes and regulations in place, and therefore we want to make sure that the two regulations don't overlap or conflict or duplicate the work that we have to do.
Got it. So it's a case of that there's regulation is fine, but it has to be smart and, you know, not just create lots of work for lawyers, but actually provide clarity to the industry.
That'd be helpful, yes.
Yeah, exactly. I make no promises on behalf of Brussels and legal clarity. Sohini, you know, again, you're in healthcare. You mentioned highly regulated. You mentioned, you know, the issues around access to data that's already there and kind of combining data sets, something I know very well. You know, what's your sense of kind of how further regulation might impact on that space?
Right. Just to give you an example, we have projects lined up all the time. Ethics committee, since GDPR came on, ethics committee takes forever for a project to start. Everything's ready, everybody's waiting. So we don't want another situation like that. On top of that, an AI ethics committee has to go and take another 6 months. So we can't afford that. We'll be out of business. But at the same time, I would say two things. One is, before even I talk about AI, I want to talk about the DSA, which is the Digital Services Act. So one of the things what they're trying to do is homogenize the regulatory environment. So at the moment, I have to take regulatory, if I have to go into new countries in EU, I have to take different regulatory approvals. If that comes through, it's much easier for us to do business. Something like that is very important. An offshoot of that is the AI Act, which I would really look forward to a common framework for data sharing. Because we are constantly talking about access to data, whether it's fintech, whether health is even more. If there is a common framework for data sharing and use of that data for further research, that's a very important thing. The last thing what they're looking to do is the PPP, the public-private partnerships, like the Horizon Europe and all that. So that gives us, companies like us, access to a lot of validated data. So we can use those types of collaborations are very important for companies like us.
Got it. So from a regulatory perspective, clarity is very important. May not be there at the moment, but if we could get it, would actually help business, particularly if we can kind of have clear cross-border rules as opposed to a situation where, which I often see, you get EU-level rules, but they're implemented slightly differently in every country, so you end up with additional friction from a law that was supposed to remove it.
Absolutely.
Got it. Okay, we've chatted a bit about the you know, the formal rules that are coming down the pipeline to regulate AI. Graham, I want to go back to you and ask you about AI ethics, which is sort of potentially a self-regulatory topic. But one of the things that I'm seeing emerging in kind of media reports and the literature is that there's this discussion about, you know, okay, AI is creating more and more content. Like, how are the technologists thinking about the ethical issues that come out of that creation of that content, and how is that being managed or approached in the industry?
Yeah, I think the ownership piece of that when AI is creating content is a very interesting one, even outside of AI, and just in terms. So there's an interesting court case back in 2011 where a photographer went off to Indonesia. While he was setting up his camera, a monkey stole his camera, took a selfie, which is probably the best selfie you'll ever see. It's called the monkey selfie. It's worth looking up afterwards. And Wikipedia actually used the image, and the photographer asked the Wikipedia to pull down the image because he didn't ask for permissions, and Wikipedia refused to because he said, you don't own the copyright to this image because you didn't take it. So it brought up a big court case. An animal rights group got involved trying to make sure that the monkey was the sole copyright owner. That failed, and it ended up being resolved outside the court. But it brings up that really interesting issue in terms of who owns the content. Yeah. And then if we look at AI, there's another issue back in 2018, I think, where a piece of art went on sale in Christie's in London and sold for £400,000. And the interesting thing there was the art was created using AI. So there's a debate about who owns that piece of content. So you had the developer who was a 19-year-old kid who created this piece of content that you can train data on. And then there's a group of 3 guys from Paris who used that piece of code, changed it slightly, uploaded the 150,000 piece of art and generated this piece of art that sold it. So it's a really interesting debate in terms of, as we move more into the AI creation of content, who actually owns that, who's gets the credit when it goes well and who's responsible when it goes badly.
Yeah, there's some great philosophical issues here we're going to have to deal with as a society around, who owns that value, because ultimately they're the ones who get remunerated from it. Yeah. So it's going to be really interesting. So I'm just conscious of time. So I guess before we go to the audience and the poll, just I guess an open question for the panel, which is really just sort of a takeaway for our audience. So I guess my question to everyone is, if you were giving one piece of advice to a company that is looking at getting into AI or scaling their use of AI, what would that piece of advice be? Like, what would be the practical business recommendation you'd give them? So, Sohini, do you want to kick it off?
Yeah, okay. So for somebody who doesn't use AI at the moment, what I would say is, if you're creating a solution or service or whatever you're offering, maybe look at the whole user journey of your client throughout your service and see what other repetitive work you're doing, and maybe take that bit out and use some, either you buy in a bolt-on solution, or depending on your financial, your technical capabilities, you can decide to build it in-house as well. But go at it in piecemeal rather than trying to do everything at the same time. From other perspective, like if you're already in AI, one thing from a business perspective, what I can say is patenting is really important. We've already had several discussions with Brian on this when we were doing the initial assessments and initial searches for our AI. So patent it's expensive, but definitely something I would recommend, because we are going through a funding round at the moment. Every investor is asking, what's our roadmap?
Got it. So take it slowly, take it in chunks, and for the love of God, get a patent if you're looking for investment. That's good. Garret?
I suppose the AI, you're looking to automate things that a machine can do quicker, or maybe a human can't do. But just because you can automate something doesn't mean you should. So I suppose that's on the general level. One piece of advice, I suppose, is getting a good technologist on who understands the capabilities of different types of AI, so you can tailor it for your business and understand how you can leverage it. And to do that, there may be few and far between. It's a sort of a niche technology. There's training. There's some great courses in Ireland, in Masters in AI, in UL, I think UCC, and in Dublin as well. So recommend that you go out and upskill your staff, and you'll be able to get your hands around it easier.
So it's a new thing, staff up and be ready to do it. Lovely. Graham?
Outside of AI, I would say try it out. We're able to try it out now using ChatGPT, so that, put in some prompts, figure out what type of content comes out, and see actually can it be useful. Inside of AI, I'd say look at like what your core proposition is. If it aligns with like a piece of IP or your core kind of where you're going with the company, it probably makes sense to build it in-house. If it's just part of a product, it probably makes sense to actually buy it in. So, look at the entire reason why AI is there and what you want to use it for.
Got it. So mess around with it a bit, and strategic clarity are key.
Perfect.
See? Cool. Brian?
I'll give the perspective from a law firm, because that's what we're doing, and I'll share a piece of advice that was given to me, which is start small, but start now, because everybody else is going to be doing it, but do kind of pick off very simple processes that can be automated and can be done so quite quickly, and those kind of quick wins help build momentum internally in your organization to build towards a culture of adopting that technology.
Okay, so get moving.
Get moving, yeah.
Great. So I guess if I was to kind of summarize, my big takeaway from all this is that, yes, the environment is changing. It's a very interesting and new technology, but when it comes to deploying in your business effectively, like basic rules of business 101 still apply. Figure out what you're going to use it for. It's not going to change the world, and you make sure you use it to support your people as opposed to, replace them fundamentally.
Absolutely.
Cool. Okay, conscious we're at time, so I think we have time for probably one question, and then might just jump and check our poll results. So, Graham, I think this question is probably best directed to you, though. Garret, jump in as well. And the question is asking, could you kind of speak briefly about API access, connectivity between different systems, improvements, etc., and where this is going? And I think I read this question as being really about, okay, and Sohini mentioned earlier the idea of, bolting onto existing systems, but there's sort of this idea perhaps that you can have different AIs doing different parts of your business, and then you build on existing technology. And I guess, could you talk a bit about how you see that ecosystem as it currently is and how it might evolve?
Yeah, of course. So at the moment, ChatGPT is pretty much an independent system, and with a lot of these AI systems, they're all independent. You know, the next wave of these are going to be API access, so you can start integrating them into your own businesses. I think where the real value of this comes is when they're all connected together. So, you know, eventually you can be able to go in and say, create a new product in a new industry that's going to have a lot of value for this customer base. And it'll go off, create a website for you, it'll generate your material and generate your content, it'll create marketing material, it'll create videos. You could even connect it to like a CAD that would create the 3D model and then connect it up to a 3D printer. And within one prompt, you could pretty much start up and create a business. Cool. And to me, that's where I see the real value of this happening, is when they're all connected together.
Yeah, it's almost like the next evolution of something we saw kind of emerge about a decade ago, where, you know, if you were starting, you know, creating a startup, like you get your AWS capacity, you get in Slack, you get your Google Docs, and there's almost a stack that you use to create your standard startup in the 2010s. And it sounds almost like we might be moving to a new stack of technologies based on AI, which could be super exciting.
Yeah, and I think an important point is that, like, this is the worst AI will ever be. Like, it's only going to get better, you know, and that's the scary thing, but it's also an exciting thing.
Yeah, you say that. I'm very skeptical about my robot Hoover, but it's another matter entirely. Okay, now we're at time, so will we throw the poll results up? Because I'm kind of curious to see what we have. Okay, would you use generative AI like ChatGPT in your business? Okay, 72% say yes, 28% say no, so definitely an appetite out there to play around with this technology and see how it goes. So that's really interesting, though obviously quite a bit of skepticism. So about a little under a third of the audience think this should not be deployed at all. So that's good to see and interesting to see. And can we move to the next question, please? Okay, which area do you believe is most likely to be affected by AI in the future? So interesting spread. I would not have gone for sales and marketing myself, but that is really interesting. And I guess it's, you know, perhaps as you said, it's the creation of content and identification of leads. So yeah, but definitely an interesting spread there across the other areas. So there is sort of a sense that it might pop up in various different areas. It's too late now. Voting is closed. We should stop that. It's like Eurovision. Okay, I guess we will leave it there. Thank you, everyone, and I'll hand it over shortly. Thank you.
Thank you, Oisín. To all of our speakers, thank you for that.